At Christmas on Kuznetsky Bridge. God, Barsik and Borscht. 3 women were talking in a hospital room. One of them, Lyudmila, a young and beautiful girl, had just been brought in by ambulance for an urgent surgery under general anesthesia. Lyudmila settled down on the bed by the door and didn't even bother to put out the things, hastily gathered at home, leaving the packages at the bedside table. "Don't worry, Lyudmila, Galina, already operated on," encouraged the girl. "Everything happens to us once for the first time. My first anesthesia was like a dream without dreams, nothing interesting. And the second one, I relaxed. I thought, I want to see God, and thank God. No, imagine, I found myself flying at a high speed in a dark corridor, like in a pipe. As soon as I noticed the light at the end of the corridor, at the most interesting moment, they woke me up. I don't remember how many times I have been under anesthesia," said Valentina, whose bed was located right by the window. "Each time it was some kind of a new experience. Yesterday I felt as if in reality. There was a light, but such a muffled one, and some voices were heard. Were they calling me? Maybe. The grass in the field was fresh and bright, of emerald color. There were a lot of flowers and beautiful butterflies there. I felt so good, so easy, walking across the field into the distance. As if in my childhood, with parents nearby. I raised my head and saw them waving to me and saying, 'We love you. We watch you from here, and we know everything about you, and will always help you.' Why on earth didn't you stay in that paradise?" sighed Galina. "Anyway, it's easier there than here." "It seemed to be a border there," Valentina replied. "Right in the fields, an invisible one. As I reached it, I just couldn't go further, that's all." "I believe neither in God nor in light," Lyudmila said smiling. "Even if a million people swear on the Bible, I will never believe it, until I see it myself." After the surgery, which was a success and didn't portend any complications, anesthesiologists began to wake Lyudmila up, but she remained unconscious. Her heart slowed down and stopped. The girl's face expressed neither sadness, nor pain, nor joy. It was mysteriously beautiful in its unearthly calmness. The anesthesiologist ran out of the room for the resuscitators. Lyudmila's roommates remained speechless. An angel appeared in the room. Lyudmila, sitting by her body on the edge of the bed, involuntarily smiled. "Wow, so do angels exist? Have you come to take me away?" "Hello, my soul. In fact, everything exists, both real and once imagined by humans. Now you will be taken to the intensive care unit and returned to your body." "Oh no," exclaimed Lyudmila, "I feel great here. I see no reason to return. No one needs me on Earth, and I am completely unadapted to life. Everything fell out of hand. I was always approaching some goal, step by step, and bang, at the last moment, the world used to collapse. Every soul has its own mission on Earth. If you don't complete it, you won't be able to continue your journey in heaven. And which one is mine? Just to serve God and people." "To serve? What do you mean?" Lyudmila asked, having understood nothing. "One day you will be a famous nun. Right, because you are unadapted to live as common people." "Me a nun?" Lyudmila cringed at the mere thought of it. "Are you saying that I am not destined to find earthly love? If you promised me now that I would become the happiest woman in the world, I would probably return. But to become a nun?" A demon showed up in the room. "Let's go," he smiled, holding out his furry paw to Lyudmila. "Where?" The girl involuntarily moved closer to the angel. "On Earth, of course. Have you both agreed beforehand? I have already told that I am not going back to my body to become a nun." "No, come on, not to your body, and I am not about the nun," the demon chuckled. "Let's move into a bum." "A homeless bum?" Lyudmila cried out, mentally picturing herself freezing in the slushy mud on the street outside the grocery shop. "But you don't want to be a nun," the demon laughed. The resuscitators rushed into the room and took away Lyudmila's body, while her soul with the angel and the demon followed the body to the intensive care unit to continue the conversation there. "Listen, Valentina," Galina turned to her neighbor, "our unbeliever must have seen the light. She liked it there, in paradise, so much that she decided not to come back." "Oh, thank God, I didn't get to paradise yet. I might have been a fool to stay there, since I have 4 grandchildren. They will be lost without me here. Who will cook my borscht for them? Valentina sighed, silently nodded in response and looked out at the street through the dusty hospital window. She had heard the conversation of Lyudmila's soul with the angel and the demon, though she hadn't seen them in the room. Valentina had no one left on Earth long ago, except for the red puss Barsik she had saved last winter. Perhaps serving Barsik is my mission on Earth. Isn't Barsik the reason I am still alive? Valentina pondered, or maybe serving the Barsiks. I wonder how many cats I could save during my life, while I saved only one. How is he now, without me? Does the concierge remember to feed him? Probably. He has already broken a few pots of flowers, my little prankster. Valentina smiled, and she wanted to return home as soon as possible to express her love and gratitude to the red puss, even if he had nothing to do with her mission on Earth. A sinner. After a small breakfast of scrambled eggs, taking with him a couple of cheese and sausage sandwiches, and only by chance remembering to take also the gospel and the cross, the parish priest, Father Alexei, slowly went to confess a certain parishioner Pelageya, who was dying of a terminal illness. Father Alexei didn't know her, as he had served in that church for a week only. Entering a shabby little room, he saw a woman about 40. She seemed to no longer react to the surrounding sounds, and her gaze was fixed on the window overlooking the garden, where the birds were singing joyfully, and the cheerful wind was rustling. Father Alexei came closer to Pelageya. Her features seemed too familiar to the priest, but in vain he tried to remember where he might have crossed paths with the dying woman, so, sitting down on a chair by her bed, as usual in such cases, he asked, "I was told that you want to confess, my dear." "Yes," the dying woman replied in a weak voice. "Then tell me your sins and transgressions." The priest made the sign of the cross and prepared to listen attentively. Pelageya started her life story from the very beginning. As a child she had broken her mother's favorite vase. Too often she had quarreled with her sister and friends, and she hadn't believed in God. However, left without a livelihood at the age of 15, Pelageya went to play the flute in the streets to get money for food, and by the will of the Almighty, for the first time she found herself in a church, where a completely different world opened up for her. What the dying woman had told him up to that point was not of particular interest to the priest. He even snored a little, and, waking up, only shook his head periodically. Sometimes it seemed to Father Alexei that he had already heard something similar before, but during his life the priest managed to serve in so many churches that thousands of stories confessed to him by parishioners had long been mixed up in his head and safely forgotten, and new ones were not remembered at all. Then I met him. The eyes of the dying woman suddenly sparkled, and she smiled. He was kind and caring. He courted me as a princess, but said almost nothing about himself, only that he loved me and we would get married after Easter. Once I found out by accident that my groom was a student at the theological seminary. However, the prospect of becoming the wife of a priest didn't frighten me at all. On the contrary, I was even delighted, since I already believed in God. But soon, when I told him we were going to have a baby, he forbade me to give birth to our son. Your son? Father Alexei furrowed his brow and fiddled with the gospel. Yes, thank God, I didn't take at least that sin upon my soul. After all, we never got married. My groom got scared, exchanged me for the daughter of a rich and influential official. And my son outwardly is a copy of his father, and I named him Alexei as well. How old is the boy? He is 17. Did you tell him about his father? No, father. My son sings in a church choir. He's going to the seminary. I didn't want him to change his attitude towards God because of such a father. All he knows is that they are too similar in appearance. Father Alexei shook his head and touched Pelageya's hand. He was silent for a while, but then, sharply withdrawing his hand, said menacingly, "So, my dear, you seduced a priest, then disobeyed him, despite the fact that a woman should always be in obedience to a man, being created out of his rib, and on the top of that you also concealed the truth from him." Father, Pelageya tried to object. "Sinner, isn't it written in the Bible that everything I have listed is a mortal sin? I sincerely repent of all my sins and ask you to forgive me." "Have that man forgiven you?" "Where can I find him now?" the unfortunate woman whispered already in tears. Is my soul doomed to wander the world like a restless ghost? My dear, the great pre-Easter fast is going on, so you must fast. Perhaps God will forgive you, but not I. The dying woman wept silently. Father Alexei was returning to the church, obviously not in a good mood, but only one thought was spinning in his head: my God, what does time make with a female beauty? That same evening, Father Alexei left his cassock at home and went with friends to a pub. Having drunk heavily, the next morning he skipped the Mass and spent the entire Holy Week with friends, remembering the Passion of Christ without parting with the bottle. On Easter, in order to avoid losing his job again, Father Alexei had to sober up. At the festive meal after the Mass, he was informed that Pelageya had been buried on Friday. The deceased had not been served by the funeral vigil due to the lack of money from her son, who nevertheless ordered a special 40 days prayer for the dead mother. Taking church wine with him, Father Alexei went to the grave of the newly departed and bumped into a handsome young man at the cemetery gate. The priest immediately recognized his son, but the son would have never recognized his father, since he looked too bad. Tea drinker. Oh, winter, frost and sun, thought Dr. Rip, walking along the main road of his hospital. Yesterday's blizzard snowed almost all the paths that his patients usually strolled. The snow crunched underfoot. Everything was fine, just a strange premonition of something bad haunted him. Suddenly, someone caught up with Dr. Rip and clapped him on the shoulder. Happy birthday. Dr. Rip turned around. Oh, Michael, thank you, he said. Let's celebrate it at lunchtime. Who are you going to invite? Michael wondered. As usual, you, the head of our department, nurses, well, someone from morgue at about past. Deal, we will be there with something delicious for tea. Dr. Rip came to the door to the surgical building. Déjà vu flashed in front of his eyes. Every morning, he used to sigh, imagining that he was opening the door to the next day of his life, which each time got only shortened. That day he didn't want to open it at all, since he became a year older, damn it. Having sketched out a brief plan and inviting colleagues to come to the staff room for tea at lunchtime, Dr. Rip went to make his rounds of the patients. The old woman in the ward number 3 was really bad. Should I discharge her, he thought. In ward number 4, Dr. Rip's heart suddenly ached. One of the beds was empty. He was about to ask the nurse where the patient had gone, as he remembered that yesterday she had been transferred to another department. Thank God, thought Dr. Rip, and probably would have crossed himself, if not for the nurse, standing next to him. He glanced at the empty bed again, trying in vain to remember why it was causing him a strange sensation, similar to déjà vu. Is something wrong? Agitated the nurse, who was afraid of losing her lucrative job in his department. No, Irene, I have just lost in my thoughts. When everyone gathered for the tea party, the head of the department got up to make the throne speech, as the door to the staff room opened suddenly, and a patient from the ward number 3 appeared on the threshold. Excuse me, please, the old lady, she seems to be dead. Damn it. I didn't manage to discharge her in time, Dr. Rip muttered mentally, and again for some reason, he caught himself feeling a déjà vu. If she died, the head of the department instantly emptied her glass and commented dryly, she can wait a little longer. Can't you see we are having a meeting? The patient from the ward number 3 nodded obediently and closed the door behind her, as the phone rang. The guard at the entrance reported that a certain Miss Hope had come to Dr. Rip. The guard asked what to do with her, to let her in or not. Only she is still missing here, Dr. Rip muttered to himself, being displeased. Miss Hope was really his last hope to be loved indeed, which he hid from everyone, including his hospital team. The head of the department was a close friend of his wife, so Dr. Rip didn't want to see Miss Hope at his work at all, not then, not ever. Moreover, they had agreed he would pick her up in the evening after the tea party, if, of course, he would be in adequate condition to drive. Don't let her in, she is my former patient, I am coming down myself. Descending the stairs, Dr. Rip felt his heart ache harder, and in the doorway on the first floor, he suddenly stopped, colliding with a girl of about 12, short in stature with disheveled, slightly curling dark hair and huge black eyes. Snowflakes glittered on her eyelashes. My lord, it's snowing again, thought Dr. Rip, involuntarily shuddering, and for some reason said aloud the usual, visiting hours are from 5 to 7. The girl continued to silently hypnotize Dr. Rip with her gaze, as if she had come to see him, not to visit some of his patients. "Who are you looking for?" he asked almost in a whisper. The girl kept silent. She looked poor, wearing an old sheepskin coat, clearly too small for her, a black long skirt, probably inherited from her older sister, and worn boots. Besides, she had neither mittens nor a hat for some reason. It suddenly seemed to Dr. Rip that he had seen that girl before. A hazy déjà vu had haunted him since morning. "These eyes have already looked at me, the same eyelashes, eyebrows. Lord, where have I seen her before? Only the nose was not like that. Stop, which nose did I mean? What happened to my memory? Am I that old? Why is she silent? How did she get here?" he pondered. "Dr. Rip," the voice of the head of the department came from above. The guard from the entrance called, "Your Hope can't wait anymore, she is leaving, so come back." "Yes, okay, I am coming." Still mesmerized by the vision, Dr. Rip responded. The girl continued to stare at him intently, and suddenly he remembered, horror reflected in his eyes. The girl nodded her head and instantly disappeared. The head of the department went down the stairs to the Jubilee, who was holding his hand over his heart. "Are you okay?" she asked in surprise. It was her mother's empty bed, exactly 1 year ago. "What bed and whose mother?" "You were a little drunk, my friend, it will pass." "I was drunk exactly a year ago and stabbed her mother to death during the surgery, how could I forget it?" "Dr. Rip, what the hell are you talking about yourself? Do you drink at work?" The head of the department laughed and, taking him by the arm, led him to the staff room to continue the tea party. "Grandma." Finally, my grandma, who had lived and died in Paris, would have exclaimed. I flew to Charles de Gaulle on Sunday at noon to enjoy Paris and yes, to die in it. It happens, you know. I had been nurturing that decision for a long time, cherishing it like a mother of a child. I felt absolutely useless to anyone, including the object of my love. To die in Paris, the city of love, because of the lack of love. Why not a plot for a novel? In addition, my grandma had dreamed of my visit to her beloved city, and I wanted to fulfill my grandma's dream, even if it was posthumous for her. The weather was sunny and warm. Approaching the hotel, I noticed the bridge, which was the high-speed metro, almost like in the movie The Last Tango in Paris. The next morning, I was to be at the Grand Opera, where all group tours started. Fortunately, I found a map in the room and, despite the concierge's assurances that the Grand Opera was so far away that one couldn't do without the metro, I made my own foot route. One could feel the city better walking. After a little rest, I decided to take a walk and reach the huge Gare du Nord railway station, but then I mixed up the streets and, apparently, went in a wrong direction. As a result, I got lost. At that desperate moment, I didn't know French. Something strange happened. The sky changed instantly. Clouds came running, the sun disappeared. And it got very cold. Involuntarily cringing, I looked around and saw in the crowd my grandma. That couldn't be. Had she emigrated to Paris, faking her own death? "Granny," I exclaimed, running up to her. Grandma, all in black, like a nun, although she had a bunch of keys glittering in her hand instead of a rosary, beckoned me to follow her. "Listen, Granny, 2 years ago, didn't you die? Do you live here?" I didn't let up. "Hush," she made me a sign and continued on her way. I realized that it was no use asking questions. My grandma was famous for the character of the Iron Lady. So I obediently walked after her, with the curiosity of a discoverer, glancing around on the way. The farther we moved away from the meeting place, the stranger things seemed to me. For example, people on the street. First, there were too many of them. I mean unnaturally. Secondly, their clothes were striking. Someone walked in rags, someone in furs, but most of them were in various theatrical costumes. Ladies and knights of the Middle Ages floated past me, and dirty, like chimney sweeps, horned and tailed devils were snooping everywhere. Fanged vampires with traces of blood on their lips flashed from time to time nearby. I decided that a carnival was going on in the city, but I was embarrassed by the faces of the actors. There was something unnatural about them. And the ominous sky and leaden clouds gave to the scene a touch of the devil. Thank God, the lanterns were already lit, although, the farther we wandered, the foggier it became around. Soon the grandma turned off into a narrow stone-paved street, which was painted in grey-blue tones by the fog. There was a small bar at the end of the street, and I followed my grandma inside. It was full of people, but why so many devils? Almost every guest was swirling around by at least two-tailed horned creatures, whispering something in both ears. Vulgar, half-naked women with smaller horns danced at the tables and imposingly paced around the bar. My grandma in the clothes of a nun looked completely wild against their background. Not paying attention to anything, she silently led me into the far corner to the grey-haired priest, who was sitting alone at a table by the window with a candle and a psalter. The priest gestured for us to sit down next to him. "Good evening, Father," I said, trying to break the lingering silence. "What's going on here?" The priest took out a scroll from a canvas bag hanging on his chair and handed it to me without comment. I opened the scroll and found. No, it's not true. What's happening to me is just a dream. On the left side of the scroll, in the minus column, my bad actions and thoughts, written down in black ink, were appearing one after another, while on the right side, in the plus column, something in red ink was appearing and cancelling the left. I hung over the scroll, and, as I looked through, I noticed that in some rows there were even years between the dates of items on the left and on the right. It was not encouraging as well that even the slightest negative thought on the left demanded, in my opinion, absolutely incomparable sacrifices on the right. Moreover, I made a discovery. As a payment for my crimes, were indicated not only the good deeds and prayers of my grandma, who had brought me there, but also of my very distant ancestors. I got scared, but I couldn't stop watching it and eventually stumbled upon a horrible finale. The penultimate entry on the left was crossed out by my grandma's vow of silence, so that was why she kept silent. Meanwhile, my decision to die in Paris was absolutely nothing to cross out on the right. Below, under the last item, there was a countdown of time. I put the scroll on the table and clasped my head in my hands. Suddenly, I felt an eerie chill behind me. Looking around, I saw a hanged man. He tried to remove the noose from his neck, but nothing worked. Once I tightened it and I can't take it off for the rest of eternity, the hanged man complained to me and fell on his knees in front of the priest. "Pray for me, Father, I am tired of carrying it around. I have been wearing it for 2 centuries, and it's still like yesterday. Every midnight it suffocates me again and again. I have been looking for you for so long. Father, have pity on me. I swear on the Bible, I have done a lot of good deeds in 200 years. I was told that you are the strongest in the matters of praying for suicides." The priest nodded, crossing the hanged man's neck, and the man immediately disappeared. I took another look at the countdown of my earthly time. There were 7 days left. Yes, just like I had planned. However, to spend 200 years in the other world, like the hanged man, was not in my plans at all. "Father," I turned to the priest and nodded at my last point, "I won't do it." The priest looked at me sadly and spread his arms. The countdown in the damn scroll didn't stop, and the clock kept playing against me. "So, are you saying that my decision to stay alive won't affect the date of my death? Will I be no longer on earth in 7 days?" I looked at my grandma in search of salvation, but she was still silent. I sighed, thought about it and summed it up. "Well, you called me to your place so that I could do something good during the 7 days left for me, to leave here at 0 point, without minuses, didn't you?" Both the grandma and the priest nodded in agreement. "But what can I do here in Paris, a foreign city to me? I don't even know French." My heart sank at the thought of my helplessness. Grandma spread her hands, which, apparently, meant, "Honey, think of something yourself." I woke up from the phone ringing. The maid called me in the morning at my request. Washing my face, I couldn't remember my way back to the hotel the day before, but the meeting with my grandma and the priest was clearly in front of my eyes and, apparently, I would remember it for the rest of my life. Of course, as I found out later, there were no carnival events in Paris. Perhaps my grandma had led me into a parallel reality. That happens when one is on the verge between life and death, and the door between the worlds opens slightly. But what should I do? I pondered frantically. How can I do so many good deeds? At first I thought that I had to refuse the group tours, but I didn't know French. while I could communicate with the guide and my compatriots in the same language. In case one of them needed help, I would be right there. All these 7 days, during which I continued to see both worlds at the same time, in the mornings at the Grand Opera, I joined a tour group, and, despite its small number, being extremely attentive to everyone, I was able to do a lot of small deeds unexpectedly for myself. It can seem that there is no way to help rich people during their beautiful vacation in Paris, if they have already everything. However, if you set the goal of doing as many good deeds as you can, serving everyone in your field of vision, especially remembering that Mr. Death is hanging over you with the verdict to hell, I am sure, you'll find plenty of opportunities. I practically blew the fluff out of the clothes of my tourists, holding out my hand to them every time they got off the tour bus. I turned into their personal photographer, but as a matter of principle, I didn't take pictures of myself. I picked up the things they had dropped. I patiently waited for the end of their endless fittings at Galeries Lafayette, sincerely recommending what really suited them. I brought everyone glasses and cutlery at a self-service restaurant at a lunch stop on the trip to Brussels. I picked up the man when he slipped, saving him from being hit by our bus. I helped them navigate the subway. I provided a charger for their phones, and then gave my phone itself when one man had left his own at the hotel. I bought apples and treated everyone for an afternoon snack. I shared personal contacts of the best masters of their craft. I listened to everyone's confession, consoled and encouraged that everything was for the better. I lit candles for their health in Notre Dame de Paris, and before going to bed, in my own words, asked God to help them. At the same time, I tried to do something useful for others, out of our group, just while my moving in space. I helped an old woman, a tourist from Japan, come down the slippery stairs at Fontainebleau, the country residence of kings. I fed a stray dog in the Luxembourg Gardens. I gave my umbrella to a passerby on the Champs-Élysées and walked to the hotel without any. I wiped the dust from the top of the sculpture in the Rodin Museum, because the caretaker couldn't reach it. I caught the hat blown away by the wind in the Tuileries garden and returned it to the owner, a blind old man. I helped find the mother of a lost child in the Latin Quarter. And yet, having returned to the hotel on the 7th evening, I suddenly realized how negligible little, yes, not enough, I have done compared to what I could have done in my entire life if, except for those last 7 days, I had not been fixed on myself. At night my grandma came to pick me up. That time she led me through the mist to a small cathedral, where the same priest met us. I greeted him, and he still silently handed me my scroll. My heart sank with fear. I looked inside and oh no, the last item on the left wasn't crossed out. On the right, yes, through the commas, in red ink, all the actions that I had done over the past 7 days in Paris flashed, but they were not enough to pay for the decision, even already withdrawn by me, to leave the earth ahead of schedule. I cast a horrified look, first at my grandma, then at the priest. Grandma smiled faintly and silently pointed with the key from her bunch at the bottom of the scroll where the countdown of my earthly time had previously been displayed. It disappeared. "Thank you," I exclaimed, "thank God." "Hush," Grandma smiled. "Hush," the priest echoed her. An iconographer? Who would have thought that solving the flat problem could radically change my fate and move me to a completely different reality? God works in mysterious ways, ladies and gentlemen. It all started with a fight with my girl, and then with my mother. Or rather, my girlfriend left me because I couldn't give her an apartment for the anniversary of our acquaintance. And then, sadly to admit it now, I left my mother as well. Of course, she had nothing to do with it. It was not for mother to give an apartment to my girlfriend. Besides, she had never got an apartment at all. We lived in a village. However, in the end, having left our provincial dark corner without losing hope for a bright future, I moved to the city. At first, I had to work as a food delivery guy and live in a dorm, a run-down one-room apartment on the ground floor in the suburbs, rented at once by 7 boys, me and 6 other couriers like me. A year later, having got a job as a driver in a taxi service, I was able to save up money to rent a separate flat. I must say, I needed an apartment urgently, because I had met Layla. A magically charming, black-eyed goddess with an Arabic name, translated as Twilight, or simply Night. She, and not without pride, positioned herself as a native citizen in the 1001st generation and lived with her parents in a prestigious area near a women's Orthodox monastery. Of course, I didn't dare to take Layla by storm together with her parents and their apartment, thus I decided to rent a studio nearby, already furnished and repaired, so as not to bother. However, nothing suitable was found in that area, except for the two-bedroom flat on the 13th floor. The flat turned out to be quite light, with excellent repairs, furniture and household appliances, but with a cockroach. Instead of paintings, there were icons on the walls everywhere, and the rental agreement stated that it was strictly forbidden to remove them from the walls. The real estate agent, a sweet college-aged blonde girl, noticed my dumb question while I was reading the agreement, and said that the flat belonged to the very same women monastery next to the house. Don't worry. The nuns won't go to check whether you have removed the icons or not. And when you are about to leave, just hang them back. In the evening of my check-in, to celebrate not so much the relocation as the beginning of a new stage in my life, all in dreams of Layla, I invited to a bachelor party my food brothers, who had previously shared the dorm with me. Already after midnight, the guys were dressing in the hallway before leaving, as one of them suddenly cried out, staring at the wall. "This dude on the icon threatened me with his finger," he whispered. The brothers laughed at the unfortunate guy. However, looking at the threatening icon, I froze in a daze. The saint depicted on it put his finger to his lips. Hush. After seeing the boys off, I returned to the apartment and decided to fall asleep, leaving the cleaning for the next day, but, going into the bedroom, adjacent to the neighbor's apartment, I suddenly noticed a nun at the window. I instinctively crossed myself, however, the picture didn't change. "Don't take the icons off, Stefan," the nun said in an icy voice and immediately disappeared. The next day, on Sunday, I took the risk of inviting Layla to my place, and she agreed. Having thrown her luxury furs off, Layla looked around the apartment. "Why didn't you say that you were an iconographer?" she asked in surprise, "or is this apartment a museum of Orthodox icons?" "Well, I didn't want to lose Layla at all. Shall I put them away?" "Of course, I am a Muslim. We don't do that. Anyway, I don't want them to stare at me." I began to remove the icons frantically, stacking them in a dark corner like books, and, as bad luck, they fell apart. How many were there in the whole flat? More than 100, apparently. Layla, oh Layla, she left me at midnight. I sat in the kitchen for coffee with cognac and smoking, when suddenly I felt a stream of cold air behind my back. Turning around, I saw. "Good night, Stefan," the nun said in the same icy voice. "They will be here soon. Put the icons back and get out of here." I didn't have time to answer. I heard a noise. The nun retired to the bedroom and started reciting prayers, but who was there giggling and whispering? I snapped out of my daze and cautiously crept up to the ajar door. What I saw was like a dream. Demons or devils peeked out of the wall that bordered the neighboring apartment, making faces and giggling at the nun, who continued praying at the icons stacked by me in the dark corner. Soon there was a terrible blow to the wall from the neighbors, as if someone had taken a giant sledgehammer and decided to break the partition between our flats. "What are you waiting for? Hang the icons," the nun ordered in her icy voice, turning to me, but I ran out into the hallway, got dressed and left for my brothers. I didn't work at all on Monday. I couldn't have imagined that I would be afraid of something that didn't exist for me even the day before. Returning home from work, I decided to ask the concierge about my neighbors. "Is she knocking again?" "Yes, she is crazy," the concierge said in a whisper, as if being afraid of someone listening to us. "Lonely, except for the black cat, but still young, and already like that, crazy. She seemed to be calmed down for a while, and now she is doing it again. For several years in a row, she has been knocking so that the whole house didn't sleep at night. The tenants went to the cops, but what could they do? The cops won't take her to the madhouse, they don't catch even thieves, and here are demons." "Demons?" I got excited. "Only a possessed person can knock like that. What a power in that knocks, huh? It would be better to go to a church to call some priest. Exorcist, I mean." I didn't manage to find out anything more from the concierge, however, it was quite enough to calm down at least somehow, since I got known that the matter was clearly dark. Back in the flat, I hung the icons on the walls. Of course, I didn't remember exactly in what order they had been originally located, but it was better with them than without. My thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock on the door. I found Layla at the doorstep. "Hello," I said, being surprised, but at the same time delighted. "Hello, I was just passing by, and I thought, would you like to watch a movie together tonight?" "In the cinema?" I asked, letting her into the hallway. "No, just on TV." Layla undressed and glanced into the bedroom. "What is that again?" she exclaimed. "You took those pieces of wood off, didn't you?" Probably. At that moment I first began to think about the struggle between the forces of light and darkness for the human soul. "Layla, you see, according to the rental agreement, I live here but not quite alone. These icons." "Not alone?" Layla stopped at the door to the bathroom and raised her eyebrows. "Yes, there are also demons of the woman, my neighbor. That is why the icons." "Demons?" Layla came up to me, "at the neighbors. And what are they doing here?" "They come here through the wall." "I see, from the neighbor." Layla was getting angry. "Yes, and the monastery asked." Layla twisted her finger at her temple, got dressed and left. I banged my fist on the wall, and then took off all the icons, cursing myself, and them, and the demons, and the concierge, and the nun for Layla, as suddenly a scruffy devil's head popped out of the wall. "Any cognac?" he asked me. "Do demons drink?" I asked, stunned. "Of course not. They sniff." The devil broke into a smile of the Cheshire cat and, giggling, winked. "We are drawn to earth. Don't feed us with prana. We miss physical bodies. That is why we settle into still alive ones." What the hell? I thought, not really trusting the horned creature, but I invited him to the kitchen and asked to tell me what was going on there, in exchange for a bottle of Remy Martin. "What is going on?" The devil chuckled. "War, bro." "For the neighbor's soul?" I wondered. "No, for everyone's." "And my neighbor, who is she?" "A witch. I am telling you that, but she wasn't the first, and I hope she won't be the last one." The flat next door was cursed. About 10 years ago, a man played with girls there. One of them got jealous of him to the others, signed a contract with the forces of darkness, and we were sent there to live with him. A man sheltered us and started drinking too much. As a result, drunkenly, he killed the girl who had bewitched him. The flat was opened in the presence of attesting witnesses. The corpse of the girl was carried out, but they didn't have time to put him in prison, since he shot himself. So we stayed here to wait for the newcomers. Well, a family of old people arrived with the daughter, your neighbor. And we began to work on them. The old woman hanged herself when she found out that she had cancer, the old man slit his wrists in the bathroom, and the daughter fell into witchcraft and made an altar to the devil right on all your common wall. From her side, of course. But one day she began to see us and got scared. She bought an axe and used to run after us at night all over the flat, trying to chop us into pieces. Such a funny one. Sometimes we jump inside her and take up dumbbells with her hands. I was a boxer during my lifetime, but she doesn't have a punching bag. And the dumbbells were left by her father, an athlete. "Pour some cognac, don't be greedy." I poured cognac into glasses, but at the same moment the nun appeared. She blessed us with a huge cross, began to recite a prayer, and the devil, squealing, ran back to the neighbor. "Who are you?" I asked the nun. "This is my flat," she replied. "Doesn't the flat belong to the monastery? I led an unworthy life, and God decided to enlighten me by my neighbors. I had to be baptized, learn prayers and sell almost all my property in order to buy alive icons, painted by the monks on Mount Athos. They protected me from evil. I had been collected these 300 icons for many years, reciting prayers more and more often, until one day my flat turned into a cell. Earthly life was left far behind. 3 weeks ago I was admitted to the monastery in exchange for this flat." 3 weeks ago, I involuntarily exclaimed. Yes, exactly. Usually, the flats of those who get a haircut as a monk are to be sold, and the proceeds go to the monastery treasury. I was categorically against the sale. Hardly anyone would be able to resist evil here without God's help. It was important for me to keep the revered alive icons in the flat. However, young man, neither monasteries nor monks are immune to evil. One of the neighbor's demons possessed the abbess. She killed my body with poison on the eve of your arrival in order to get the flat at her own disposal as quickly as possible and, of course, for sale. The money, as you understand, won't go to the monastery. Anyhow, observing outward decency, the abbess decided not to touch the flat during 40 days after my death. Do you still believe in God? Who allowed the abbess to kill you? Her plan succeeded for one reason only. God decided it the best way for my soul to leave. My soul had been maturing here, in this apartment, until making the final conscious choice in favor of the light. But my rental agreement is signed for a year. You won't last more than 40 days here, Stefan. I advise you to return all the icons on the walls and leave the flat as soon as possible. Having said that, the nun disappeared. Everything that happened next seemed to me an endless nightmare. I was tossing and turning between Layla, I still managed to make peace with her and grief in half. And the icons, taking them off every time Layla came in the evenings, but being too lazy to hang them back. Between the instantly evaporating bottles of Remy Martin and the demons, that more and more often dropped in to sniff my cognac with soul-exhausting talks about their antics and tricks used during the exorcist's rites. Between the witch and the other neighbors, that were collecting signatures on regular petitions, calling the police in vain and taking the cursed flat under siege. The infernal knocking at night turned into a real war. The witch tried to demolish our common wall, while the other neighbors answered her by knocking on the radiators, on the floor, the ceiling, on her door, and throwing endless curses from all the directions. A month of sleepless nights on the battlefield, and I was squeezed like a lemon. I wanted to run away from there, but under the terms of the rental agreement, concluded for a year, it was impossible to terminate without paying for the entire period. Since I never became a millionaire, my finances like terrorists sang romances, holding me as a hostage within the framework of the concluded agreement. That day none appeared to me in the morning. If you want your nightmare to end, go to church for confession tonight, and take communion tomorrow morning. Yes, I was baptized, but I had never gone to church in my conscious life. However, without thinking twice, I decided to follow the nun's advice. The next day, leaving the church after communion, I felt an incredible lightness of being. But just a few minutes later I heard a terrible explosion from the side where my house was located. At the same time, I received a message from Layla. She decided to part with me. Being in a state of shock, like a zombie, I turned the corner and habitually looked at my house, but instead of windows and balconies on the 13th floor, I found the fire-breathing mouth of a dragon. Of course, the news said that there had been a banal gas explosion in the damned flat, which had destroyed also the one I rented. But, as I glanced at the calendar, I involuntarily began to make calculations. The explosion occurred exactly on the 40th day after the nun's death. Fortunately, none of the residents were injured. Only the black cat was mentioned in the list of the disappeared. A week later, the news about the mysterious disappearance of both the abbess and the monastery treasury appeared in the media. A month later, I was tonsured a monk in a distant hermitage not far from the village, where my mother still lives. A year later, I began to bless houses and flats, and after another 10 years, to paint icons and exorcise demons. You are welcome. Warriors of Light. Alla was 14. She liked to sit on the windowsill and look at the night sky, pondering the universe in search of answers to the question, what was there, beyond the line, after life? 10 years ago, her parents had gone to sea and never returned. The wreckage of the yacht was found. Their bodies were not. They had probably been caught in the tornado. Anyway, Alla was even glad of no funeral. Her parents would remain in memory as forever alive. Besides, for some years, together with her friend Ella, the girl had attended the parish Sunday school, where she realized the non-existence of death with all her being. Grandparents were watching TV. Alla was humming something under her breath and strumming the guitar, when the phone rang. Ella came back. Ella, Alla's closest friend, a girl with cat-like green eyes, lived with her mother, stepfather and younger half-sister. Ella was a year older than Alla, and, having entered a medical college, she had left for the village for the rest of that summer. Alla spent the summer relaxing at her granny's dacha in the country to continue since September her studies at school, after graduation of which she was going to enter the university. The girls met and went towards the park, sharing the latest news with each other. I can't imagine school without you now, Ella sighed, and why are you so depressed? I am scared, Ella admitted. You see, every summer, my mother is always with us, and now she restarts to work the shift and leave us at night. And the stepfather, well, I am scared to be alone at home with him. He looks at me the way like that. Maybe you are just imagining. I am not. Tell your mom. Yes, of course, she will surely believe me. You know, lately I have been thinking about God, asking myself questions and I can't find answers. I go to church to confess and take communion. Priests smile at my sins. I feel good in church, my soul is calm there. But sometimes it seems to me that there is no God, and there is nothing after death either. Come on, I often feel my parents come to visit me. I don't see them, but I know that they are right here, very close. And they come to me in dreams also. Life doesn't end with a funeral. It's just that no one is able to contain even one galaxy, to know its structure and design. What a great power rules the universe. Do you think we are born to die? Unbelievable. Imagine. A person is talking to you, thinking, reasoning, and suddenly, in a second, he is gone dead. Where did his thinking self, his consciousness, go? No, Ella, I don't want to believe that consciousness is fading forever. It can't be so, not everything disappears with the physical body. God exists, at least because I feel that way. Then why does God send troubles to people? Why did he take your parents away? How do you know who sends troubles and who took my parents away? Ella darkened. Probably, it was the devil. Then it turns out that the devil is stronger than God, Ella sighed. The next day the girlfriends came to the cathedral to confirm that they would continue their studies at Sunday school. In the huge cathedral, candles were burning by a multitude of ancient icons, people were leaving for home after the liturgy, a choir of adults was conferring on the right balcony, and a dead man in coffin was brought to the crucifix on the left to be served. A bum, asking for alms, approached Ella. You are going to be an angel, muttered the bum and added, soon. The girls looked at each other, the bum instantly disappeared. They placed their candles and went out through the left door into the street, where the children were already crowded, waiting for registration to Sunday school. The first lesson was scheduled for the second Sunday in September, and the choir rehearsals began on the first Saturday. Rehearsals were held in a two-story building next to the cathedral, in the refectory, while classes were held on the second floor of the cathedral itself, in a small room of the bell tower. When Ella first entered the refectory, she was amazed. Multicolored stained glass windows, a gigantic, stunningly beautiful carpet on the floor, a golden satin fabric on the walls, ancient armchairs, a very big icon of the Virgin Mary with a burning lamp in the left corner and a massive table with a white tablecloth in front. Moreover, from the painted ceiling, the faces of children with wings, some of them smiling, while others crying, looked out of the white fluffy clouds. Each pupil was given 2 sets of church clothes, the text of the Divine Liturgy and textbooks, including a church Slavonic dictionary. Far from everyone was selected to sing at liturgies in the cathedral, but Ella and Alla, an impeccable first soprano, always sang on holidays and on the eve, although in the children's choir, on the solea at the left altar gate. Irina Viktorovna, a singer from the adult choir and a children's choir teacher, was very kind and polite. If she heard someone falsely, she never cursed or shouted, she explained with a smile what was wrong. However, her main virtue was that she taught not just to sing words, but to feel prayer in the soul and transmit it in sounds. Alla understood the teacher, since it was often impossible to express feelings in words, and a prayer in the soul was made without words. Approaching the icons, Alla didn't ask for something specific from a particular saint, but, turning to heaven, she strove for the light so that everything bad would remain in the past, evil would bypass, and all the good would be attracted. When Alla sang in the cathedral on the solea during the liturgy, she felt her soul going out, turning into sounds and merging with the invisible and eternal, called God. Her consciousness, wrapped in a misty haze of incense and enchanted by prayers, at such moments was not subject to earthly thoughts, having left the physical body, ceasing to feel it in exchange for the absolute tranquility and joy of the soul. Trying to comprehend the texts of the sacred writings, imbued with centuries of wisdom, but scrupulously encrypted by the sister of talent brevity, Allah unconditionally believed that Christ had really existed on earth and had been head above mere mortals. He helped others and knew to forgive, believed in eternal life and found it at the resurrection. Christ knew not only the laws listed in the 10 Commandments, but also the secrets of the universe, which were still behind the scenes. I wish I could meet him and talk, Allah thought. Her inquisitive mind no longer had enough of church books and evasive answers of priests. That day, during the lesson The History of the Russian Orthodox Church, the door opened, and Irina Viktorovna appeared. Smiling as always, she apologized for the interruption and announced the names of 10 singers, including Ella and Allah, to come to the refectory after the lesson, because on Saturday evening they would sing at the liturgy, served by the Patriarch Alexei II himself. Allah's soul trembled at the upcoming, they were trusted to sing to the Patriarch. Saturday was a frosty October day. Ella and Allah entered the church dressing room on the ground floor of the refectory. Each of the Sunday school pupils had their own hanger and 2 sets of church clothes. For holiday liturgies, girls had a thin white dress to the toes with long sleeves, all in ruffles and frills, and for the ordinary ones, a black skirt to the toes and a white shirt. The refectory with the dressing room was almost opposite the side door of the cathedral, located at the left altar gate, where the children's choir sang on the solea. It was not a special feat to run from the dressing room to the choir room without outerwear. It was getting colder and darker. All 10 chosen ones of the children's choir had already gathered in the refectory. Irina Viktorovna gave each of them a carnation to present to the Patriarch. 5 minutes before the appointed time, the delegation of white dresses, headed by Irina Viktorovna, left the refectory, but instead of going to the saving side door of the cathedral, they went towards the main entrance, and the parishioners watched in amazement the excited angels flying by. That evening all the priests were fussing and rushing back and forth, exchanging just a couple of words with each other. Finally, the carpet ran from the altar to the main entrance, crawled out onto the stairs and went down to warm the chilled cobblestone pavement in front of the cathedral. The angels were placed on both sides of the carpet right on the open air behind the priests. The rows of parishioners and curious passers-by lined up further. Everyone eagerly awaited the appearance of the 11 paces long black car, as someone in the crowd had claimed, but it stubbornly didn't appear. Soon the girls began shivering from the cold, and people in the crowd threw their scarves over them and even donated jackets. Allah shifted her gaze to the already turned-on lantern and noticed snowflakes spinning in the light. It was snowing for the first time that year. Ella's eyes were turned to the sky. "Does God want us to freeze and get sick?" she said to Allah quietly. "The flowers, by the way, are already frozen. That is, they died in the prime of life." Allah had no time to object. Since the crowd stirred, the Patriarch's car appeared in the distance. Soon the limousine stopped so that the back door, from which the Patriarch came out, was right at the beginning of the red carpet. The cameras of journalists clicked. The numerous TV operators switched on their ones. The rector of the cathedral greeted the Patriarch, then all the clergy came for a blessing. Alexei II took a step forward, and it was the turn of the angels. They held out frozen carnations and got blessed. The same as in the photos, white cap, blue intelligent eyes, thought Allah. The picture of the first meeting with the Patriarch, white dresses to the toes, crystal carnations against the background of the night sky, shining stars and swirling snowflakes in the light of a street lanterns, would remain magic for Allah, inexpressible in words, forever, and would hardly fade into oblivion like TV videos and journalists' photos that had such a short expiration date. The girls ran to the solea. Irina Viktorovna was more worried than ever, because it was a premiere, the children choir performance in front of the people and the Patriarch, during the entire liturgy without any support of the adult choir, in the main cathedral of the country. Allah was afraid to sing something wrong and let Irina Viktorovna down, but the presence of the cold-blooded Ella was somewhat reassuring. The girl started timidly, however, the excitement passed soon, and long life wishes of many years sounded impressive. The most important gift was waiting for Allah after the liturgy. Irina Viktorovna said that the next day, on Sunday, during the liturgy, which again would be served by Alexei II, Ella and Allah, together, would perform one of the chants in 2 voices. coming out on the central solaya directly opposite the entrance to the altar. The girls were on their way home. Incredible. This is some magic, Ella whispered, still not believing what was happening, but Ella, immersed in her own thoughts, hardly crawled out to talk. Have you finally found what you have been missing? She asked. And you have not. What does the faith give, or God? It's strange for a singer like you to ask me about it, Ella sighed. The faith in God, or not in God, but in something eternal and good, the highest, as well as the hope for the light and the forces of light help are necessary for a person. I become more and more convinced that he doesn't exist. Today, for example, innocent carnations were killed, and God didn't even resist. By the way, that happened in his eparchy, or rather, in his own house, in church. The church calls everyone to do good, forgive and love one's neighbor, not in words, but in deeds. God is everything good and perfect, gathered into a single whole. Aspiring to God means to improve yourself, then our world will automatically change for the better. However, people see specks in everyone, except for themselves. No, Allah, it changes nothing, and that's the problem. It changes. Everything can be lost, but if you hope and believe, you will never lose yourself. Sooner or later everyone will be rewarded, regardless of one's faith. As the priest, teacher of history said, you must not ask whether one believes in God. Don't judge by one's faith and words, you have to look at one's deeds. I agree. Faith is the guiding thread, and hope is the staff. It's more difficult to walk without the staff. And without faith, it's easy to get lost on the way. Beautiful words, but they are far from the truth of life. You know my mother. She doesn't care about me. Nobody needs me, I just prevent her from enjoying life. Or rather, if I were gone, my mother's life would be easier. Yesterday we had another scandal, everything is wrong for her. It started with nothing and ended with the words that I could live on the street and never come back. Stepfather agreed with her, looking at me and licking. There is nowhere to go. Do you suggest that I become a bum? I don't see my future. If God exists, he left me. Live with us. Do you want me to ask my? What are you talking about? Mother will find it out, and my life will be completely unbearable. Okay, I am sorry, I didn't mean to spoil your mood. The next day, Ella and Allah, in a pillar of light, pouring on them from the upper right window, superbly performed a two-voice solo on the central solaya, right under the dome of the cathedral, opposite the open gates to the altar where the patriarch was serving. After the liturgy, Irina Viktorovna admitted that she had almost burst into tears during their singing from the feeling of something great and divine, overwhelming her soul, and that on Easter she would apply for the transfer of Ella and Allah to the adult choir. Ella returned to the cathedral almost at midnight. She told the guard that she had lost her keys. Of course, the old man recognized her, therefore, with a doomed sigh, he opened the cathedral and even gave out a pocket flashlight so as not to attract attention by turning on the usual lighting, then he retired to his gatehouse. The faces of the saints were cold. And when Ella touched the icons with her lips, and when she looked into their eyes, and when she crossed herself, she didn't feel anything. Then she went to the closed altar gates and mentally asked God, "Are you sleeping? What about me? You don't care, do you?" Ella looked around helplessly, no one. She even felt frightened in the majestic silence of the extinguished lamps and the absence of lit candles. The cathedral, immersed in darkness, seemed to have been secretly captured by the dark forces. And she wanted to shout for at least one of the saints to appear, but she didn't have time, since someone took her by the hand. Ella turned around and saw a small, hunched-over old woman in black, appeared out of nowhere in front of her. The wrinkled face, hooked nose and twinkling eyes reminded Ella of a witch from fairy tales. The gaze of the old woman paralyzed the girl, she couldn't move. "You can't escape your fate, baby," muttered the old woman. "Get over it and out of here. It's not the place for you." The old woman disappeared into the depths of the gloomy cathedral as suddenly as she had appeared. Ella rushed out, knocked on the guard's window to let him close the doors, and walked away. Allah called Ella, as usual, to go to the liturgy together. No more, Ella, the stepfather answered to the phone in a non-standard way. What do you mean? Does she no longer live with you? Ella asked. She doesn't live with anyone else, she died. Why died? How? Foolishly. Ella froze in a daze. Ella's stepfather waited a bit and hung up. Ella slowly sank to the floor. Thoughts of her own guilt in the death of Ella instantly took root and sprouted in her heart. Not saving one meant to kill one, didn't it? In the evening, Ella wandered dumbly through the streets in a sudden snowfall and couldn't understand why God had allowed her friend to die. She consoled herself with only one thing. God knew better. He knew something that neither Ella nor Ella did. And then, Ella should give her a sign, send greetings from the other world, confirm that the soul didn't die with the body. Suddenly, someone called out Ella. She turned around and saw a young man. Are you Ella? He asked. Yes, she nodded, not understanding anything. Don't be afraid, I am Roman. I saw you on the Solea in the cathedral. You sing in the children's choir of Irina Viktorovna, right? Yes, Ella replied, surprised at what was going on. I sing too, upstairs, in the adult choir. I had a strange dream today. As if the girl from the lower choir, with whom you both sang at the Patriarch's liturgy, asked me to tell you that it was not your fault. I was going to find you next weekend at liturgy, and I just ran into you right now. The Palm Sunday Eve liturgy was one of Ella's favorites. As before, she sang solo in the lower children's choir, and a week later, on Easter, at the request of Irina Viktorovna for a raise upstairs, she planned to join the adult choir. The parishioners raised the willow and swung it over their heads, greeting the Saviour, who was entering Jerusalem. The Patriarch began to sprinkle holy water on the willow, and Ella's eyes met Katya, an almost holy girl. Katya had been singing in the children's choir for a long time, but that liturgy for some reason she was in the crowd of parishioners with the blessed willow. Everything was perfect in Katya. Beautiful, healthy, the daughter of rich parents who dressed her like a doll. Katya didn't miss a single Sunday liturgy and prayed so fervently that all her prayers must have been answered immediately. The only thing that God deprived her of was an ear for music. However, Irina Viktorovna couldn't refuse the priest's daughter and accepted her into the children's choir so that at least she could stand on the solea next to the singers, just opening her mouth from time to time. After the liturgy, at the icon seeking the dead, Ella accidentally ran into Katya, who blushed for some reason. Hi. Why have not you been with us today? Ella asked. I won't sing with you anymore, Katya said quietly and, looking down again, added, you have sung a wonderful solo today. Already at the exit from the cathedral, Irina Viktorovna caught Ella. Here are you. Wait, Ella, look, I am sorry. Forgive me, please. What has happened? Not understanding why Irina Viktorovna was suddenly so excited and not smiling at all, Ella wondered. You know, I asked to transfer you to the adult choir, and everyone was in favor. But Katya, you know her father, and there was only one place. They admitted her even without an audition, you see. I am awfully sorry, Ella. Don't get upset. You sing to the Patriarch himself. And he likes the way you sing. At Christmas time we plan a tour to America, and you will be the first to go there. Forgive them, Ella, and forgive me. It means that God needs your voice here, with me, on the solea, really. God sees and knows everything. Ella silently hugged the already crying Irina Viktorovna and left the cathedral just as silently. Touring in America with an Orthodox church choir, who would have thought? However, Ella liked neither cities with skyscrapers, nor the American lifestyle. It was something innate, inexplicable, perhaps inherited from her grandparents or from some past incarnations. She didn't feel like going to America at all. At the last moment, Ella tried to replace herself with the very same Katya, the priest's daughter, but she flew to Israel for Christmas with her parents. Besides, Irina Viktorovna begged Ella almost on her knees, since 3 of 10 choristers suddenly had got the flu, and one boy had broken his leg. Ella's refusal meant to let Irina Viktorovna down, and the girl gave up. In the minibus, booked for the delegation from the cathedral to the airport, Roman from the adult choir sat next to Ella. He replaced the boy with the broken leg. Ella told Roman about Ella and confessed that sometimes she felt her friend nearby. Ella must have become an angel, assured Roman. God left you for life on earth, and Ella is now whispering to make you friends with me. Ella smiled, but had no time to answer because of the sharp blow from the collision of their minibus with a huge truck that flew out of the oncoming lane. In the cathedral by the icon seeking the dead there were two ghosts, Ella and Alla, as if waiting for someone. They are coming, look, Ella whispered. Her mother and stepfather approached the icon. The stepfather lit a candle and put it in the candlestick. Ella, not without difficulty, took the candle out of the candlestick, lifted it 15 or 20 centimeters up, and then, in front of her parents seized with horror, blew it out, carried through the air and placed it in a box with candle stubs on the floor nearby. Yes, I am alive, alive, she shouted. Ella's stepfather grabbed the hand of his wife, speechless from what she had seen, and led her away. Is that allowed to make the tricks? Ella was surprised, but immediately tried to do the same with another burning candle in the candlestick in vain. Of course not, but nostalgia sometimes comes up. I miss everything dense. Besides, I have been practicing the trick for so long that I could show it once. Ella smiled. Roman with a scroll appeared by the icon. Hello, warriors of the light. The dark forces don't sleep. Let's not relax so that they don't say on earth that the devil is stronger than God. So here are our tasks for today. Stuck Pluto. Pluto, lord of the kingdom of the dead, circling around in the heavenly dial of the zodiacal clock, froze at the gate to his own kingdom at 8. All the men I had fallen in love with in my life were under Pluto management, and one of them had at his birth as many as 5 planets between 8 and 9 on the zodiacal clock, or in the kingdom of the dead. Such an accent gives away serial killers and maniacs, mafia and financial tycoons, and also great black magicians, and possibly ghosts. The next day the sun was going to bathe Pluto in its rays, to illuminate him and turn him on. A strange premonition of something global, ready to crash down on me like an avalanche or tsunami, neither bad nor good, but shocking, didn't allow me to fall asleep. In the morning, when my consciousness finally gave up, 2 people appeared, as if my guardians. One of them was a ghost and the other. The sound of a vibrating phone brought me back to reality. Michael is dead, said the text message. We are all going to die, I calmly typed in reply to an unknown person. The sun greeted me through the blinds. Who made you so cynical? Barbara, Michael died. Which Michael? Continuing to understand little, I decided to clarify just in case, suddenly realizing that one of the 2 men I had just dreamed about was named Michael. Yesterday, Barbara, I ran by chance into the guy who had assembled furniture for you. He said that Michael, who had been in love with you, died. A terrible thought and, forgive me God, not at all about Michael, who had appeared to me in my dream, so sweet, kind, harmless, writing music and really loving me from afar, silently, realizing that there could be nothing but a working relationship between us, flashed through my mind, and I finally woke up, jumping out of bed. I dreamt about both of them. You, Pluto, I shouted at the whole universe to an undefined number. How? You are dead, you died many years ago. I emailed you last year, you wondered the way a stranger had got your address. You didn't recognize me. Maybe you were not ready. But what way? How? Have you forgotten how many debts I had back then? You said it yourself, it is easier to die. No one would have been surprised. Yes, I just had to die, by my own. Would you prefer to find your love killed for real? I raised the blinds and the sun dazzled me. Pluto people, being under the patronage of the Lord of the Kingdom of the Dead, used to survive where everyone else met death. I dreamt about you today, sinking to the floor, I whispered, remembering how many times in life we had tried to be together, but something happened beyond our control, that left no chance, driving us apart, until one day. Great, you never have dreams without sense. Something happened yesterday, I don't know how to explain it. So there is no need to explain. I just want you to be nearby now. You are a ghost, and I need a real man, I said, still refusing to believe in a miracle. Surely, I will be in Monte Carlo this weekend. I have to sort out some affairs. And next weekend you will fly to me in Venice. We'll never meet, I exhaled, remembering that next weekend the sun would stop caressing Pluto, and he would step into his own kingdom. There are no options not to meet, Barbara. I will be waiting for you on your favorite bridge. However, the sun disappeared into the clouds. Some evil stars contributed to the launch of a mass lethal virus epidemic, and the air traffic between countries was suspended. The world stepped into the kingdom of death through the wide open gates. My airline tickets were eaten by the fireplace. Italy was in a fever. The ghost of my Pluto wrote to me several times something like, "It will be over soon, be patient, wait a little more just about," and then he disappeared. As the pandemic was over, I left for Greece and lived on a tiny island opposite to Mount Athos, not far from the women's monastery of the Archangel Michael, not missing a single liturgy, at which I asked prayers for the souls of Pluto and Michael every time, until that Sunday when I woke up being foggy myself and the first step I did was a trip to Venice. God, I wandered all the bridges, in vain. Pluto was nowhere to be found. When I returned to Greece and settled in the monastery of the Archangel Michael, which had become dear to my soul, I was painfully looking for the best way to find the beloved ghost. However, I still had no access to the universal databank, and no stairs to heaven were observed anywhere around. I could do nothing but praying. On the 9th day, right during the liturgy, out of the altar gate, so suddenly and quietly that at first I didn't even believe in his reality, appeared Michael. He came up to me, smiling, leaned over and kissed my foggy hand. "Where can I find him?" I asked hopefully. "You don't have to look for him, Barbara. Besides, he's alive." "Alive?" I exclaimed loudly to the whole monastery. Thank God, nuns there usually didn't hear otherworldly voices. What a twist! I prayed for both of you as for dead. God has all alive, don't worry. Your Pluto was seriously ill then, yes, but survived thanks to your prayers. However, since then, all these years, by the will of heaven, he's been in a state to be able only to pray silently by his soul. Another blow. Are you saying that if I hadn't prayed for him, he would have died a long time ago? So, it was me who condemned him to suffer, wasn't it? You gave him a chance, Michael smiled, to get something better in the other world than what he deserved. One day, when they consider him fit, he will be taken away. You can help the unfortunate Pluto shorten the time of his painful stay on Earth by continuing to pray for him here. However, you have the right to leave for heaven with me right now. So, where can I find him? If you don't have access to the information tablets, then that's necessary for something and exclusively for the good. Well, you have to make your decision here and now, Barbara. Oh, sorry, I almost forgot, probably, you won't be able to be together even after. I staggered. The thought of the impossibility to find happiness with a beloved one, even posthumously, in the kingdom of the dead, never crossed my mind, neither during life on earth, nor after it. My God! How unacceptably easy we used to scatter our beloved ones, to exchange the warmth of the soul for material goods. How stupidly we don't appreciate the opportunity to love and be loved here and now. Has my Pluto, stuck on Earth at the entrance to the kingdom of the dead, rethought his life? And, if so, how many years would it take me to pray his soul out? I will stay here, I decided, as I couldn't do otherwise. Just promise me, Michael, that one day I will meet him again on the bridge in Venice, right? You have no chance not to meet him, if you want to meet him, Michael laughed and added, already dissolving in the sunlight that suddenly streamed through the monastery's windows, although, maybe, not on the bridge and not in Venice. At Christmas on Kuznetsky Bridge. Christmas is the most magical time on Earth, because the doors between the worlds swing wide open and all sorts of miracles happen. We collided on Kuznetsky Bridge near a bookstore window, checking our maps. Hello, I said smiling. Hello, he smiled back, and we recognized each other. It happens like that, you go down to check the next route and at a certain point bump into someone important from your future life, not just a passerby. A feeling of kinship is fixed in the souls, which wakes up later, when physical bodies collide on Earth. Alice, I introduced myself. Vasya, he said. Look, Vasya, these white flakes are magic. I shifted my gaze to the snow and involuntarily began to waltz in the air. It's beautiful here, isn't it? Snow is not magic, he smiled, joining my waltz. a common natural phenomenon when it's cold on Earth. I don't like winter, I usually incarnate in the south. As for the lanterns, I agree, they are not bad. I like all seasons and lanterns, lanterns. They are like enchanted souls from fairy tales. I returned to the bookstore window. By the way, is this an entrance to the Library of the Universe? Come on, Alice, it's just a tiny shop. Do you want to take a look? Why not? I replied. We glided slowly past the bookshelves, looking at the covers with curiosity. Wow, he said in surprise, books in French, English, Spanish. It's easy to communicate in the world of thoughts, while there are so many languages on Earth. We are going to speak the same language, Vasya, are not we? Of course, he winked at me in response and added, a little more, and we'll start talking. We went out into the street, decorated with glittering Christmas trees, and people with lots of bags with gifts were flickering in the light of lanterns and clearly enjoying the holiday atmosphere. God, what a beauty, and just imagine, everything has a solid body, not a kind of visualization or hologram, like we do. By the way, why is this place called the bridge? There is no bridge around. The river was there, then it was driven underground, over there, let's go, I will show you. Vasya took me around the center of Moscow, telling me all sorts of interesting stories, and then took me to the roof of a house. It's very nice here, I said, hovering on the edge of the roof. They will open a cafe here one day, and I will visit this place. Check it out, is it with you? A great idea to make a rooftop cafe, I whispered, unfolding my map. Oh, you are right, I will be here too. Let's check the time. Vasya told me his own. Yes, it turns out that on the roof we are together, I joyfully exclaimed. And what are you going to do on Earth? Something with guillotine, said Vasya seriously and laughed, adding, a regulatory one. What's? I asked warily, remembering my cut-off head. Alice, I was an executioner in a previous life, in Britain, a royal one, mind you. In Britain, a royal, I almost jumped up and, indicating the place and time, projected a hologram of my execution on a giant advertising screen. Weren't you the one who chopped my head off so unprofessionally, on the third attempt only? Vasya watched the fragment carefully and dissolved the hologram, sighing. Well, it looks like they have decided to reconcile us. Relax, Alice. This time I will write orders. New orders instead of old ones, each of them for the whole kingdom. And what's your purpose now? They asked me to write fairy tales, as many as possible. For kids about Christmas time? No, for grown-ups about us, ghosts. Can you imagine? They say, not all people still remember the existence of our world after incarnation. Anyhow, I would like to have time also to get to the monastery so that I can play 2 incarnations at once. What's your hurry for? There is still a long time before the last battle. And what's the point of descending to Earth to refuse earthly pleasures? As for me, I am always nostalgic for the physical body and the astral. However, it turns out, we'll have at least one thing in common. We are both writers. Vasya winked and asked, didn't you happen to be told how your fairy tales would intersect with my orders? I didn't, and what about you, Vasya? Neither did I. But if they decided to bump us together in advance, it means we will do something important for each other. Do you agree? He asked me and, having got my nodding in consent, unfolded his map again. Then, Alice, let's check further. By the way, did they teach you at the Astral Academy why the preliminary passage of the route is useful? In some places, already during the incarnation, we get a feeling of déjà vu. Yes, in the checking points, déjà vu lets us know that we are on the right track. And if there is a repeat loop, then we didn't complete something we had planned. Oh, Alice, you must have graduated with excellent marks only, right? And what did you think of me? Okay, Alice, let's do the spatio-temporal overlay of our maps. Having carefully traced the entire route from the point of our acquaintance on KUZNETSKY Bridge to the moment each of us was to return in heaven, we couldn't believe our eyes. The joint segment was repeated twice with a gap of 10 years. Wow, a loop, I said in surprise. It also happens, Vasya shrugged and added, don't worry, Alice. Moscow, you know, wasn't built in a day, either. And, Judging by the places we are to visit, we can draw at least two conclusions. So, the first one is, "You won't cut off my head again," I laughed. Right, and secondly, "Doesn't it look like?" I smiled slyly, and we waltzed in the air, looking forward to our meeting at Christmas on Kuznetsky Bridge. We agreed to meet at Christmas on Kuznetsky Bridge. He was late because of the traffic, so I walked around a little and eventually stopped at the bookstore window, looking at foreign language editions of fairy tales. Santa Claus asked me to give the little girl Alice a small gift. Having silently crept up to me, Vasya whispered and hugged me. "Hello," I exclaimed joyfully, turning around. Of course, I suggested that Vasya choose something for himself as a gift, too, but he said that, except for my tenderness, he needed nothing. "How do you like my orange mink?" I asked. They fed the mink oranges. "It's gorgeous. However, you are even better without it. So let's go to our sweet place. Shall we eat before or after? Or coffee before and dinner after?" We drank coffee in the rooftop cafe. "How do you like it here?" Vasya asked. "I am fine with you everywhere. By the way, I have read your reports to the ministers, but what is the regulatory guillotine? Were you an executioner in your previous life?" "Well, what other previous lives, Alice?" He reproached me and stroked my hand. "The guillotine means to discard the unnecessary so that the old one does not interfere with the new one." We entered the room, Vasya turned on the dim light, and we finally collapsed into a wide bed 10 years later. Who would have thought it? Vasya lost a lot of weight, turning almost into a skeleton, and I, on the contrary, threw meat on my bones, but an invisible attraction between us existed as if by itself and didn't depend on anything. Sex after a certain age is like feeling that you are at home. There is nothing unknown and shy, and no need to set records for the Guinness Book. You accept each other for who you are. Just enjoying the fact that everyone is alive and well, you both are together here and now, and you can not only be tender, but also speak out. "Listen, Vasya," I said thoughtfully, "there have been many repeats in my life. Almost always I knew why I was brought back here or there, but now with you why? There is only here and now, Alice. It contains you and me, we feel good together, why to think why?" "Well, what do you need me for, Vasya? You have a family, untouchable, so it's for something else. There are no coincidences, you know." "You won't believe it. I don't have anyone around me to talk to but you," Vasya thought, stroking my back. "However, what do you need me for? You are free and smart, almost a goddess, and I am a grey-haired married devil. By the way, I want to write a fairy tale Christmas on Kuznetsky Bridge about us. So do you need me for one story only? And what are we going to do in it?" Vasya tickled me, and I gently bit his ear. "To live forever," I laughed. "We are ghosts, or rather, not yet incarnated souls, but already going to Earth." "Listen, what else ghosts, Alice?" Vasya laughed. "There is nothing, except for here and now. I studied much literature in all related areas, neither God nor devil found. We are small energy balls of light, radiating information in a vast ocean. Ocean is God, and we are all in him, and he is in us, and we are interconnected. Alice, I believe that the human brain will evolve further, and people will live longer. Perhaps our consciousness will flow somehow through the network into virtual reality, but there is still nothing there. Live here and now, Alice, have fun. I set myself a goal to live to 80 years first, and then to 100. So I will die when you are." I counted our age difference and announced the time. "So little. Why? What for and what's the hurry, Alice?" "It's written so up there, the death will fall into its sector on the clock of life." "Listen, Alice. I don't believe in any clock, of course, but any record can be rewritten. Life is like a chess game, Vasya. At that moment, I will be put in checkmate immediately. There are no other options, right after my birthday. No, Alice, there are always a lot of moves in a chess game. So, rewind a little bit and find a fork in the road where you can make the right move. The death program turns on just on that birthday, as well as all programs. You can't rewrite before it comes on, because there is nothing to rewrite, no death is there, and then it's too late. Then think, Alice, how can you play death differently? Well, make a fake death, deceive it. What do you mean? I don't know, it just came to me from somewhere that death can be different. Ordinary and symbolic. It's a strange thought, Vasya. Theoretically each sector on the clock has several meanings. However, there is an unambiguous death. The word death is flicking in front of me on the inner screen even now. Vasya turned me around to face him and kissed me on the third eye. What else can be interpreted as death, he whispered. Come on, think. You are given time to discover the double bottom of death and slip out of its clutches. By the way, I don't want you to die so early. If there is no God, why to die? Leaving the world is not a problem, the problem is to stay in it. Suddenly, I almost jumped on the bed. Wow, listen Vasya, you were right. Why didn't it occur to me before? To leave the world for a monastery, that is, to have a haircut in a nun. This means to be dead for the world. Here it is, a double bottom, symbolic death. Are you serious? Vasya sighed. Yes, of course, I got out of bed excitedly. Exactly, you are a genius, it's really an option. I will go to a monastery and pray for people like you. And then we will meet at Christmas on KUZNETSKY Bridge, already as ghosts. And you will be ashamed of yourself for not believing in us. He pulled me by the hand and brought me back into his arms. Well, agreed. You will go to the monastery, Alice, but not now. We met at Christmas on KUZNETSKY Bridge. Christmas is the most magical time on earth, because the doors between the worlds swing wide open and all sorts of miracles happen. He was standing at the bookstore window with the next map. Hello, I said smiling. Alice, he smiled back, I had a feeling you should come. I have a different name now. Well, sorry, I have got a different one too. Okay, where is your new map? Let's check ours. I don't have it anymore. It's a pity, he sighed, it's a pity we won't meet again. Although, according to my map, it seems I will spend my entire incarnation in some kind of a prison, in complete isolation. Look here, there is a place in the wilderness. It's a bare field now, and in the astral tablets, despite a lot of building options, a colony for especially dangerous people is the most real one. Can you imagine that? I have been appointed your guardian. I smiled and spread my snow-white wings. Let's build a monastery there. When the fairies die, strange things happen to us sometimes in life. And we don't even notice them happening. James Barrie, Peter Pan. That temple was Kirill's childhood dream, which we made a reality together. I was with him almost from the very beginning. I even remember him laying the foundation. Kirill was gushing with ideas, changing them at an amazing speed, so the construction used to be dragged on, constantly adjusting to some new dreams of its creator. As a result, the temple turned out to be magnificent and completely unlike others in the city, and it seemed that not a single resident missed its grand opening. However, in every fairy tale, a negative character, a representative of the forces of darkness, is sure to appear, and at the same time, the fairy tale turns into reality. Hi, boys, I said in a half-asleep voice, flopping into the back seat of Kirill's cool car. It was about 5 in the morning, the plane took off at 7. After passing through passport control, we sat down at the bar. Evil called someone. Let's get wasted right now, he said. Then on the plane, until we reach the point, we will be in paradise. Well, let's drink for a good trip, Kirill said cheerfully, clinking cognac with us. 4 hours later, we were already in Milan. We took a taxi and went straight home to a 3-room apartment on the top floor. The landlady spoke with a clear accent, being from Portugal. Yes, everything was the same. I got a room with an almost child's bed in the attic, with a small window in the sloping roof, a gift for real astrologers and just lovers of the sky. After drinking more cognac, we went to the giant specialized exhibition. Evil, as usual, thought that he had come there purely for fun, so after walking for a couple of hours, he began to lag and lazily dragged along behind me and Kirill in 13 steps. Hey, fairy, does Kirill have speed boots, or what? Evil asked me, but I didn't react to his jokes and hummed a song about a star named the sun. From time to time, we bumped into some of the familiar Italians. They kissed me on both cheeks and expressed their furious joy. Let's go back and start with these people this project, with those people that won. Kirill exclaimed joyfully after each fleeting meeting and negotiations, and periodically added plaintively, "Give me a cigarette, please." I knew in advance that he would forget the cigarettes, so I took them for him. In the evening after the exhibition, we used to go for a walk around the city. It meant for Kirill to go around all the men's clothing stores of the most famous brands. Evil didn't mind emptying his pockets full of greens, either. "Hey, fairy, write down the name of our street for me, if suddenly I leave you behind," asked Evil, but for the whole trip he never fell behind, probably because that was characteristic of Evil. From time to time we went to cafes to sit and have a drink. Thus the night came. We returned to the apartment and drank cognac. "Yes, they all are goats," Evil said with a grin, sprawling on the sofa with a glass of cognac and a cigarette. "That is why everything sucks in your temple. The temple must be blown up to make room. I don't even see the point of taking it apart brick by brick, then transporting and installing it somewhere in a new place." Kirill nodded to Evil in response, being fascinated, while I tried in vain to find another way to get rid of Evil. "Tomorrow morning, we have to buy something to eat, besides cognac," Kirill said thoughtfully, looking at me and saying goodbye before going to his room. "Coffee in bed," I whispered and drifted off to sleep. I dreamed about some Italian waiting to take me to the airport, though not in Milan, in Venice, but I dissolved into the fog again. When I woke up early in the morning, I heard a cuckoo and asked as usual, "Tell me, what time is left?" The cuckoo instantly fell silent. I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. Kirill was already awake too, and Evil was snoring. "Let's go to the store, to buy something to eat, to have not only cognac for breakfast," Kirill suggested. In the store, he picked up all sorts of different things. When we returned, Evil was still dormant. Kirill and I set the table. Kirill woke up Evil. They sat drinking cognac. I took coffee. Then Kirill and I went to wash the dishes, and Evil lit up a cigarette. In the taxi, I sat next to the driver and could take my breath away by speaking the local dialect. "Where are you from?" the taxi driver asked. "The city of temples," I replied. "And who are these people with you?" "The one, sitting behind you, is almost the devil himself." "Wow, really?" the taxi driver exclaimed joyfully, delighted at the ensuing conversation, and looked in the mirror to see Evil. "A thief and a liar. He wants to destroy the temple and kill me," I said calmly. "Blimey, and the second one is your big boss, isn't he?" "The boss, yes, he is good, but he is bewitched by the devil and can't hear anything." "But your boss is not a fool, is he? Would he let the devil kill you?" "He listens to those who sing sweetly." "Can't you sing?" "I can." "So why don't you sing to him?" "I work here, in the world of illusions, under a contract that prohibits singing." "Wow, so are you a fairy? Were you sent here by the higher forces to protect the boss?" "Well, yes, but not the boss, to protect the temple. Although, it turns out, the boss as well." "And what is there?" "On the right, in the window, behind the wall." "A monastery." "No, it's a cemetery," the taxi driver said proudly. "You have to be very careful not to get there. But, listen, fairy, doesn't the boss count his money? Didn't he spend it on the temple?" "I count his money." "It's dangerous to count other people's money. Be careful." "Blimey, you are really a fairy. I have heard that only those who are very nostalgic for corporeality are sent here to serve." "Probably," I replied, based on my own history. "Anyway, fairies die too. They say they die when one stops believing in them." I sighed. We drove up to the entrance of the exhibition. The taxi driver handed me his business card. "Hold on, fairy, and call me in case." In the afternoon we had important negotiations with the sharks of imperialism. Kirill put on a suit for the occasion. If one didn't know that they were sharks, one would never find them out, because, having met them on the street, one would take them for an ordinary small fish. However, that's how it should be. The same as with Evil. "Translate well, will you?" Kirill demanded. "I mean, with all the shades of what they have on mind." "What they have on mind, that's exactly my job," I thought and nodded. While Kirill and I were walking around the Temple of Imperialism, Listening to the lectures of the Italians about who, where, when, how, for what and why, evil was constantly lost in nooks and crannies, thus expressing the complete absence of any interest in anything due to his omniscience. It got on Kirill's nerves, and from time to time he shouted to evil to come up and listen to the sharks, wise by their own experience. I was pleased with the fact that the temple we had built was not inferior to the masterpieces of Italian architecture. Once again cutting circles around me, the oldest shark of imperialism nevertheless rode up to me on a bicycle. Yes, their temple was so enormous that the sharks didn't always swim inside it. And, taking advantage of the fact that Kirill had gone away for evil, the shark pinched me affably. Do you think Kirill finally understood something? What exactly Kirill was supposed to understand, the shark didn't specify, but, being a fairy, I understood without comment. I think you are right. After having wondered only for a second what to answer so that it would turn out neither so nor that, I replied. Anyhow, isn't it possible to know what goes on in the head of another person? I lied. I could know what was going on in another person's head, and even more in Kirill's. You are smart, said the shark with deep respect, looking into my eyes. It's hard with Kirill, isn't it? Such a temper. How much does he pay to you? Excuse me, I have a contract with the higher forces. The shark immediately apologized for invading someone else's territory. The sharks of imperialism in general were very courteous to me. When we talked at the round table, they addressed me personally. That didn't correspond to the etiquette of official negotiations. The sharks were well aware of etiquette, but they did it on purpose, deliberately emphasizing their human attitude towards the fairies. For example, as that day, instead of saying, Kirill, we are ready to cooperate with you not only in the field of building temples, they said, Sonny, tell Kirill that we are ready to cooperate with him. Sometimes the sharks suddenly switched to their own and obviously known to me dialect, as if informing me it was not to be translated word for word, but I had the right to listen to them and retell their conversation to Kirill later in my own words. What are they talking about? Why are you silent? Kirill used to be angry, not realizing that if I had started to retell him the previous fragment of the shark's entertaining talk, I would not have heard the next one. I used to dive into Kirill's feline eyes sadly. How much he could have read in me at those moments, if he hadn't looked away, but evil, of course, read everything. The train ride from Milan to Venice used to take us about 3 hours. We flew into Milan and flew out from Venice. That all had happened before, yes. Evil remembered that, but Kirill didn't. Round and round, one and the same, or rather, hundreds of variations of the same scenario. I don't understand where and what to do differently. I can't find the point of no return, beyond which the temple is to be destroyed every time. How to resist evil? How can I help Kirill if I have no right to act by the methods of evil? I was sitting by the window, Kirill was next to me, and evil was opposite, as usual. While they pretended to be asleep, I pretended to write something in a notebook. Evil opened his eyes. Are you scribbling the minutes of the meeting with the sharks? He asked, smiling. No, a fairy tale. Have you already written the minutes? Having opened his eyes, Kirill wondered slyly. Of course, no one needed any minutes, that was such a joke, but I defiantly looked at my watch. The working day is already over, boys. Then write it down there, in your fairy tale, Kirill asked, that there is neither restaurant car nor a place to smoke in this train for a human being. What is the story about? Evil grinned, offering me for the umpteenth time to retell Kirill our scenario, which still wasn't played out in the direction of good. About guardian angels, fairies and elves sent to those boys and girls in the world of illusions for whose souls there is a war between the forces of light and darkness. Kirill pressed himself into a chair. Evil, who knew the tale perfectly, covered his face with his palms so as not to betray his malevolent smirk. In brief, how does it end? Kirill asked. So far nothing is over yet, I sighed. Why, tell me, Kirill was surprised. The fairy turned out to be patient, she doesn't want to give up. Already dead 1,000 times, she stubbornly reincarnates. Dead? Why did the fairy die? Kirill got even more surprised. Do fairies die? Give me a cigarette, I will go to smoke that. Kirill went out into the vestibule. Evil silently looked at me, anticipating his victory. Well, where are your miracles? Nothing new, give up, come on. How long can we travel to Milan? I am already sick of the exhibition and this script. Let's play the next one. There's so many scenarios, like dirt. What are you stuck to this like a bath leaf? On the eve of departure, as before, Evil left us alone, citing wild fatigue. Let's go out for dinner somewhere, Kirill suggested. We sat in a restaurant, across from each other. I listened to his beautiful speeches with a sinking heart, until the same point. Listen, Kirill sighed and, without looking into my eyes, continued, today I gave the order to dismantle our temple, because, well, it is not the place for a temple there. It doesn't bring me much money, you know. There are enough temples in the city, without our one. And we will open the casino. It's much more profitable than the temple. And then we will restore our temple somewhere in the region. Besides, to be honest, all this mouse fuss over trifles has already got me over the top. Then Kirill said something about the damn unbalanced schedule of purchases at the candle factory. The problems with the automatic stock accounting of wax rests, incense, oil and lamp oil. The wrong proportions of diluting church wine with water. Glitches in accounting for the distribution of prosphora and baptismal water. The complaints of parishioners about the lack of proper control over the absolution of sins. The poor quality of wiping dust from the icons and a decrease in sales of printed materials. I listened to him for the umpteenth time, trying my best to restrain my feelings, because under the contract, I had no right to tell Kirill that, as it had been already written in the script, at the grand opening of the casino, he would be killed. However, it was already the umpteenth time, and... Do you want to know the truth? I stopped his train of thought. Kirill was dumbfounded for a moment, and then reluctantly nodded in agreement. Fairies die when one stops believing in them. I remembered the words of the taxi driver as the final warning of my own guardian. And yes, I violated the terms of the contract and told Kirill everything. About the script and Evil, sent to him as a temptation under the codename Casino, and about the contract with the higher forces, and, well, about the fact that I was a fairy. Kirill kept silent. However, I felt my wings gradually begin to melt, my earthly vision started floating, my body thinned faster and faster with every second, and then I lost to Evil again. What a stupid feature of fairies to fall in love with their charges in the world of illusions. A vacation on Athos? I would like to put my feet up on the wall, lying across the bed and spread my arms out. Once, during my vacation, I tried to draw myself in that position, and when I accidentally turned the picture upside down, or no, not upside down, but so that my head was on top, I got a crucifix. The darkness was thickening. Mark whirled around until he froze with another silent question. Do you want me to ask for permission to leave with you? Mark had never gone abroad with me. I used to travel alone. Not only all over Europe, I visited Egypt, Israel, Peru. The pages in my foreign passport turned into a mosaic panel of stamps. That time everything would be much more complicated and dangerous. Iraq. I will work there, I replied. Okay, on your vacation, we will definitely go somewhere out together. You will forget everything and relax. By the way, I heard that people who walked around the place, where the Tower of Babel had been located, got their memory erased. Is that the reason you asked to go to Iraq? Exactly, people. One can forget, but only there, since everything is public domain here. We never ask for business trips, Mark. I won't forget anything. How many of them failed? How often did the employees of the forces of darkness use some glitches or distortions of the matrix of time-space in the so-called places of power, at the points of open doors between the worlds? It seems to fatalists that everything is predetermined. It is obviously easier for them to live. Each business trip of the employees of our office, which, according to earthly time, can last an instant, is a fragment of a chess game of the several millennia tournament. And my worst memory is the Bermuda Triangle. Listen, what about going to Monaco? Mark kept dreaming. Let's play in the casino. Or you prefer Africa to stay closer to nature? Where and what way do you want to spend your vacation? In silence and away from people, on some island, maybe. Not Easter Island, since I have just been there. Just don't tell me again that you want to join the Mount Athos monks, Mark snorted and grimaced. I wasn't angry with him at all. Those who were angry didn't take root there. I loved Mark in my own way, but I wasn't in the mood to dream of a vacation. My sad memories of the Bermuda Triangle were stirred up by another round of news that didn't inspire optimism. Besides, it was all a fairy tale. Everything Mark told me. He pretended that the fairy tale would come true, and I pretended to believe it. Mark was a troll. We were on different levels. We couldn't spend any vacation together. I got into the astral tablets, collected all the information about the personalities involved in the upcoming event and, after saying goodbye to Mark, instantly moved to the express train to Earth. Hello, Bella. You are the most beautiful warrior of light, Gabriel whispered to me, taking a seat nearby. Don't be sad, sunshine, everything will be fine. Hello. I nodded and realized how much I wanted to snuggle up to him like a human and right that moment. We got used to practicing visualization. And the express train, and the human-like spirits instead of energy balls, and everything existing on Earth appear in heaven in the form of holograms, but it's impossible to materialize some physical body in order to feel each other. The darkness was thickening. We were descending in silence. I felt extremely tired. You will sleep it off in the other world, my grandma used to say, but she was wrong, since one could sleep it off on Earth only. I madly wanted to switch myself off, but my mind was constantly tortured by the question, was it possible to save those whom I didn't save? One of them, Ludwig, for example. We had crossed paths once on vacation, but sometime later I didn't save the ship with him, stuck in the Bermuda Triangle. I was directed a ray of light by Gabriel. My unearthly love, he always felt when I was in trouble. Anyhow, at that moment Gabriel stayed next to me, to my right, in the express train. But in a moment I would be in Iraq, and Gabriel, in Palestine. Suddenly I felt so alone. Hardly anyone on Earth could imagine what it was like to be a warrior of light. Where do you want to rest? Gabriel asked me a mute question. We had never crossed paths with Gabriel on Earth, it was a pity. I remembered the first time I had met him in heaven, I thought, I would like to spend a vacation with him. I had never met anyone like Gabriel before, but as soon as I looked into the astral tablets, I realized immediately why. It's good that the access to the tablets, absent on Earth, is given back only on your return from vacation, since the less you know, the sweeter you sleep during vacation. And it's good as well that here, unlike on Earth, no one has the right to send you on vacation by force. If you want, you write an application, they agree with you the period and select options for your tour program. How many vacations were already in my memory? Quite enough from the point of view of a human being on Earth, and too few as vacations during one earthly life, from the point of view of a heaven citizen. So what's about Monaco, to play in the casino? Or Africa, to stay closer to nature? Gabriel supposed without waiting for my answer. Where and what way do you want to spend your next vacation? In silence and away from people, I answered him. On Mount Athos with the monks, Gabriel read my thoughts. What a pity, he had spent last vacation on Mount Athos, and immediately after return he was granted a rank of those who had no vacation anymore.